Hi, this is Ed Spurliers. I hope you enjoy this latest episode of Random Trek. Thank you very much. Yeah?
Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to Movie Night here on Random Trek. I am your faithful Trapped in the Machine captain, Christopher Ingle, joined as always by my artificially intelligent first officer who keeps me in the Matrix, Brennan, the Mystical Mar. Brennan, how we doing?
Good, Mr. Ingle.
Uh, yes, today we are taking a look at the 1999, I would say modern classic, The Matrix. I love this film. How about you, Brennan?
Oh, yeah, it's brilliant.
It really is, and I think even the technology and everything, it all holds up today. But it's one of those films like the sequels did not fare as well, but
Certainly
that
not.
original, man. But we are joined, of course, by my brother, Aaron Dye. He and I have talked about this an awful lot, haven't we, Aaron?
Yes, we have. Absolutely.
And we reference being in the Matrix once in a while, every so often.
Yes.
Or a glitch in the Matrix. That's one of my favorite ones is the glitch. But
The cat
Aaron,
shaking again.
yeah, we're both cat lovers, so yeah, sometimes I question this.
Yeah.
But Aaron, when do you remember the first time you saw this film?
Yes, I went and saw it while it was still in the theater. I think I had waited a little bit of time to go see it. I wanted to see kind of how the buzz was circulating about it, and it seemed to be pretty neat. So yeah, I went to the theater on the initial release.
Awesome. Brennan, did I remember you and I are about teens the same time. Did you get to see it in its original release?
I did not. I actually did not see it till about 5 years ago.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I did not see it in theaters, if my memory's right, but this is probably one of those that my dad brought home from the video store and we watched. And I really liked it.
I
I
mean,
just
I
fell
knew
in
it. Everybody knew this film.
love. Hmm.
Like, everybody knows these iconic images and the whole idea of the Matrix. So I knew all about that. I just didn't actually sit down and watch it for a long time.
It was one of those pop cultural films, kind of like The Sixth Sense too. When
Oh
it
my
came out,
word,
like
yes.
everybody watched it.
I mean, the honest truth is that 1999 was an incredible year for cinema.
Mhm.
I mean, amazing, and so many game changers too.
Oh yeah. And I know technologically, well, and we'll talk about it because that's just as important a part of this film is the technology in making it. Uh, but let me go ahead and turn the con over to you before I take over this film.
Indeed, Mr. Ingle. I mean, we all know this film. This is one of those cultural touchstones that we all know. Particularly if you were our age or grew up in that Gen X, Gen Y era. This is one of the most defining films. Now, even though it came out in March of 1999, I almost want to count this as a 21st century film because in so many ways it defined the 21st century in terms of filmmaking and the influence. I don't even know if it would take us a week plus sitting here to describe all the influences this had visually, and the idea of the action film being upgraded to the kind of the techno action film. This would lead to movies like Inception. This would probably lead to a lot of Christopher Nolan's films in terms of the visual design. It would certainly change a lot about the just changing the action genre entirely. It's taking the John Woo ideas of the 90s, giving it sort of the technological edge to it, that also deals with big ideas. And the action genre has not been the same. A lot of people tried to be the Matrix. None of the games that he's quite gotten to that level, except maybe Inception, but they're totally different films. So that other than being the techno thriller action film. And so we all kind of know the story. And we'll begin with the story, which is the idea that the world that we see is not real, but a computer image put into our minds, and we believe it to be reality. A group of humans have managed to unplug themselves from the Matrix and are now trying to find someone they call the One, or the Chosen One, who is basically the first person to wake up from the Matrix. And they believe that this young hacker named Neo, played by the great Keanu Reeves, during his long before the Keanu sense, what do they call it? The Keanu sense?
The first one.
The first resurrection of his career.
Indeed. And they think he is a reincarnation of this one. They unplug him and train him in the ways of manipulating the system and realizing his true potential in order to stop the Matrix and shut it down, all the while being pursued by the sinister agents who are computer programs designed to prevent people from fiddling with the system. So that's kind of the story of the Matrix. We all know it. We all love it. It borrows ideas that go back thousands of years. The allegory of the cave by Plato, I think, and many, many other ideas that are not new, but they are packaged in a new way. So we'll start with our guest, Aaron. What are your thoughts on the plot and story of this film?
First things first, I always wanted one of the shift up phones that they had. Always. I thought those were the coolest things ever. And the idea of the story at the time was very Neuromancer, Blade Runner kind of,
Exactly.
that almost high fantasy sci-fi that many people had aspired to make movies on.
Cyberpunk, yes.
And I loved it. That movie, and I hate to say it, but Blade 2, kind of shaped a lot of stuff that I was into for many years to come after that.
I mean, it's interesting you mention it. It is very Philip K. Dick, William Gibson, very much the product of their kind of imagination about the world. In fact, Philip K. Dick, at a convention many years ago, because Philip K. Dick, as we know, was a bit unstable. He was at a sci-fi convention, I think in the 80s, where he gets up there and instead of giving a little speech, he gives this diatribe about how we're living in the Matrix. This is years before the Matrix came out. And it's his conspiracy theory that we're all living in the Matrix. And he said, deja vu is proof of this, which is interesting because deja vu will play a part in the Matrix. So it's just interesting that Philip K. Dick was already, whether he was well or not, was already thinking about these things long before. Chris, your thoughts on the plot and the story?
I took it in a very different direction for me, but I think along similar lines in that I saw a lot of Orwellian traits in here,
Mm-hmm.
1984, a little bit of Animal Farm, but also things like A Clockwork Orange,
Yes, very
um,
much.
Fahrenheit 451, this idea of this what is supposed to be a utopian society that isn't utopian.
Good
And
point.
that's the deal is that we can't make it utopia, but we're watching you. And you don't the thing with the Matrix is they don't know they're being watched.
Mm.
They don't understand that. They don't, it's just day to day like we have here now. And that's a crazy thing. You even think about it today. This idea of we are being watched, we are being monitored, our data is being tracked,
True.
it's so Orwellian to me and very, very obviously dystopian. But I love that you mentioned Dick too, because absolutely does have this Blade Runner kind of feel to it with a more adrenaline pumped into it, with a little bit of mysticism,
Yes, it's
just
very
a
true.
little hint of that hero's journey mystical aspect that you can't explain, that even though the sequel tried to explain it, I still don't buy it. um you know this story
Yeah,
is what makes this
unfortunately.
work. Yeah, yeah. I thought about wearing like a Colonel Sanders type suit and just having monitors in the background, and no,
Mm-hmm.
no, okay. But anyway, um yeah, the story is not an original one. It isn't really, but their execution of it is, I think, what makes this memorable. The questions that they put into make sense. And even though this was done in 1999, the questions that were being asked inside the Matrix kind of are questions we still have today.
Mm-hmm.
I love this. I think that's why this resonates and works so well, is that it's still relevant 25 years later. It's still questions we talk about. It's still things we go into, and Orwell's themes still stick hard with it even today.
Very well said. Yeah, no, Orwellian, I think it's a good way to describe this. The idea that you're being watched all the time by a malevolent entity that wants to control you and basically use you for labor, basically is what, in the case of the Matrix, the machine sucking our energy out of our bodies.
Mhm.
One of the other things that's interesting about the Matrix is it reminds me in many ways of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings in the idea that the ideas were not original, but the packaging was something we had never seen before.
Mhm.
The Wachowski sisters took all these ideas that we were familiar with and kind of bunched them together into something we had never seen before. I mean, certainly we had seen the wuxia Hong Kong action films, very John Woo kind of stuff. But to combine it with the cerebral, deep ideas, that was something new. And also, I think we need to mention them before we get moving on. Lena and Lily Wachowski were very much ahead of their time with this film. Unfortunately, the rest of their films haven't quite gotten to this level, unfortunately. The less said about Speed Racer, the better. Chris, to those listening, Chris just gave me a very offended face.
Your captain
I can
likes.
vouch for this. He loves Speed Racer.
I love Speed Racer. It's so different. But you know what? It's another one of those, and I'm sure we'll talk Speed Racer one day in the future. It's so
That
unique, and I
that just reminded me of that episode of Dexter's Laboratory, where it's the parody of Speed Racer.
Mhm.
Great episode.
No, so of course some of the most iconic things to come out of the Matrix are the cast. So let's kind of get into them. Before we get into them more individually, Captain Ingle, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the ensemble as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, it is what makes this film work. Besides the technology, you got to believe these characters. Um, and mind you, Keanu, we'll talk individually, but it starts with your base guys, your heroes, your protagonists. You gotta believe in them, and I do. Like I listen. I'm not one of those that believes that early Keanu is like just the best ever,
Yes,
because it's
Keanu
not.
Reeves in Much Ado About Nothing left a lot to be
No, like
desired.
okay, one of my
Yeah,
favorite films of all time is still Bram Stoker's Dracula.
yeah.
Keanu is awful in Bram
Yeah,
Stoker's
he's
Yes, he
Dracula.
is. The
horrible in
worst
that movie.
English accent I've ever heard.
Oh yeah, his English accent is awful.
I have
Uh
seen things count.
but his still today, to the kids, when my kids learn something in class, or my personal kids, when they learn something, I still look at them and go, I know kung fu.
No,
You
you
know,
don't, to quote Will Ferrell.
show me. Anyway, but no, they have to play off of each other well to believe this. If your actors can't put it together, it doesn't work. And I buy everybody inside and outside of the Matrix. It makes sense to a certain extent, and
Mm,
we'll get into that. There is I'll be honest, the chemistry between Carrie Ann Moss and this one isn't believable to me.
yeah, I was gonna
Later,
say.
later down the line, even in the sequels, I think they build it a little bit better. It's a little bit better there, including a really awkward love scene in the second film that I'm still like, this is kind of
Oh,
odd.
well, I guess I'll have to look forward to that. Oh no.
You haven't seen the sequel?
No.
Oh wow. Yeah, there's a love scene that's really weird.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe not.
you get Keanu's butt.
Ugh,
Some
Yeah,
no
that's
people like
true.
thanks.
that.
That's true.
Some people like that, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, but other than kind of the slightly awkward chemistry between those
Send all
two,
your complaints to page turners. They were not. So.
no, this cast works, and your villains, Hugo Weaving
Oh, yeah.
is a name here in this country because of this movie. He's done
Mm,
other things. Do not get me wrong. Hugo had a career before this film. Uh, you know, Priscilla, Queen of the Desert.
yes. Yes.
Hey, listen,
There it is.
it's a great
No,
film.
no,
It
I
is.
agree
It's very good.
100%.
It's very good.
And nobody realizes this. He was the voice of Rex, the male sheepdog in Babe. Like as a kid, I didn't
That's
know
right.
that.
Yes. Yes, he was.
But this film makes him a household name.
Yeah.
He was already working on Lord of the Rings, but I secretly would like to think this is what got him the job. It's not.
Oh
I'd
yeah.
like to think it is.
Yeah.
Mr. Baggins.
Because I think when this came out, they were already headed towards they would have had to have
They had
already
already
been
started filming Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, they had started filming, yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
and then of course we go on with him in V for Vendetta, which is
Yeah.
one of my all-time
Oh, yeah.
favorite films. So this, just goes on and on and on and on and on.
Remember the 5th
5th
of
of
November,
November. My daughter, yeah. Oh, that's
the
a whole.
gunpowder treason and plot.
I think we should do V for Vendetta in the
Oh,
future.
I agree.
But we move forward. The
that.
point is that this cast plays off of each other well, and everybody is believable. I buy the environments that they are in terms of their reactions. I buy everything that's going on here, and you don't see a lot. You either see the Matrix or you see the ship, which I'm okay with. I love that aspect of it.
The aptly named Nebuchadnezzar.
The Nebuchadnezzar,
Yeah.
still can't spell it today. I still can't
I
spell it.
can't spell it. Even though I've been reading the Bible my whole life, I still can't spell it.
Yeah. So yeah, this ensemble cast that really isn't an ensemble cast is pretty spot on, and I kind of wish there were a couple of more accolades for specifically Hugo Weaving,
Yeah,
because as a
Mhm.
villain, he's
Yeah.
so good in this. Very
he's
good.
probably one of the most iconic villains in recent cinema.
You know, how can you say anything if you can't?
Can't speak.
And just his cadence and things like that.
And
And
his bad American accent, but we won't
I
get
don't think it's that bad. It's just a little slow, but anyway, I love this cast. This cast is can I mention too that in an alternate universe, this was not our cast. This was not our
Yes,
Neo.
that's true. That's very true.
So during its development, the first person they actually went to was Will Smith.
Yes,
And
he
Will
had,
Smith,
and he turned it down in favor of what movie?
Wild Wild West.
Yes. Oh my word,
uh,
bad career decisions.
Another one that, you
Hey,
know what, it's
but John Peters got his giant mechanical spider.
he did get the
That's
giant
true. He
mechanical
did. He
spider.
did. Everyone go listen to Kevin Smith tell that story.
It's
It's a
not, and
great story.
it isn't the only difference here too. Morpheus, the original idea was Val Kilmer.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But another weird, I turned it down because I didn't understand it. There was a point where Sean Connery was even considered for Morpheus as
Yes,
well.
2 films in a row where he turned it down because he didn't understand it.
I know he
To his
didn't get it.
everlasting shame.
He does that and then turned down Lord of the Rings, and I'm like,
And then he went
Sean,
on to do League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
it's not the worst film in the
Well,
world,
I
guys.
know, but
Everyone
No,
mocks
it's
that
not.
film.
No,
I
it's
like
not.
it's such campy B
but
movie
unfortunately, it
schlock, and I
killed
love
his
it.
career.
It is.
It
But
killed his career there.
in that,
Unfortunately.
in that other realm, this film would have been so different if it was Will Smith. And I've thought about this. Like, I think Will Smith could have pulled this off pretty darn well.
It's sort of mental image of Sean Connery saying, I'll show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
I bet you will, Sean.
Oh,
A lot more jokes there. But
There's
yeah,
a
yeah.
celebrity
So
Jeopardy joke.
yes. Oh, yes.
the game's afoot, Trebek. But
Well,
I love
speaking
our
of,
cast. Yeah. I'll digress. I love this cast, and it could have been something different. I'm kind of glad it wasn't. It'd be interesting to see, but I like our cast.
speaking of, who could ever forget Tobey Maguire as Keanu Reeves on Celebrity Jeopardy?
I forgot about that.
Jaleel White. Everyone go look that up. It's absolutely brilliant. Aaron, your thoughts on the cast of The Matrix?
I I'm gonna agree with Chris. I buy the cast, save for a couple of awkward moments and wooden
Yeah,
reactions
yeah,
from, like, Carrie Ann Moss. There's a couple of other odd placements of dialogue and things like that. For the most part, though, it's a good cast.
yeah. Now, I wanted to ask really quick. There are some minor characters in this story that don't really get a lot of screen time and seem in some manner perhaps to be superfluous. Aaron, do you agree with that about some of the like Dozer and Mouse and what's the lady, the blonde lady?
I can't remember her name off the
Yeah,
top of my
The
head, but yeah, I
bomb
know exactly who
lady.
you're talking.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
not like this. Her.
yeah. Do you feel that maybe the minor
Hey,
characters
Puck.
That's right.
don't get their due in this film?
Yeah, yeah. I think there are a couple of characters who do kind of, there could have been more, definitely Tank and Dozer. There could have been more with that, but obviously, those the characters kind of change, as the sequels go, and there's different people that end up playing them. But that's a different conversation for a different show. But yeah, yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Some of them do kind of get shortchanged a little bit.
There's
Yeah.
there's one too, not shortchanged. but I gotta mention it, see what you feel. Are you a Gloria Foster or a Mary Alice person when it comes to the Oracle?
I am definitely Gloria Foster.
Yes.
The OG Oracle, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
she was the first Oracle, and she died during the making of the second and third
Yeah,
films. And so
unfortunately.
they had some parts with her filmed, but then Mary Alice came in, and they actually kind of wrote it into the story why she looked different. Um,
I still love the fact that the Oracle will not speak to Neo until she gives him a cookie. All my tech heads out there, you know what I mean.
It goes way over my head, but we'll go there.
well, give him the short version of what a cookie is in the tech world, Aaron.
I know
You
what
go
it
to
is.
you go to a website and it says it's going to give you a tracking cookie so it knows where you've been on the website.
It's a cookie.
Oh, okay, that's true.
Yeah.
So Chris, your thoughts on the minor characters, or did I already ask?
They're fine. I hate Cypher. I just don't like him. Little punk. Everything would have been fine if you
Big
just,
birthday Joey Pants.
yeah. The whole scene with him sitting there with Smith and like, I miss a steak. Like, you little punk, you sold out for beef. Listen, I love a porterhouse like the next person, but dude, you about nearly killed everybody for some steak.
Well, we'll get there when we talk about the themes because it's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
Of people who would prefer the Matrix over reality.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at our main characters here. Now, I can't picture in my mind four more iconic characters than Neo, Trinity, Morpheus, and Agent Smith. I mean, it's enough for a movie to have one iconic character. This movie has four iconic characters that everyone knows what they look like. Everyone knows, when you're at a convention and a lady's wearing a leather suit with sunglasses, it's Trinity. We all know that. And that's how iconic these characters have become. So let's start with our main hero, Neil, Mr. Anderson, like Keanu Reeves. This was sort of during I hate to say it, but Keanu Reeves is a joke era. Nowadays, we wouldn't say that about him. But at the time, whoa, he's that guy. And also, this movie, by the way, is very memeable. Keanu's statements are very memeable. But, so we'll start with him. I think that Keanu gets the job done, but I wouldn't call it the greatest performance I've ever seen on Keanu. He certainly delivered better things. He works as the protagonist, though. He is maybe a little bit on the bland side. Chris, do you agree with that?
A little bit, yeah. He's very subdued. But again, when you look now at like John Wick, with
Mm-hmm.
a few exceptions, he kind of still plays his action heroes that way. And this isn't the first time he would do this. If you go back to 1995, Johnny Mnemonic,
Yes.
in a way, Johnny Mnemonic is the pre-Neo.
Yes, that's true.
Very, very similar ideas here too. Or going to Devil's Advocate, there are very subdued moments with him. Another example of an accent that just isn't quite right with him. Leave accents out of it, Neo.
Unfortunately.
But no,
Thank
subdued
goodness
is
for Al Pacino in that movie.
subdued is what he does best. Even if you go back to Bill and Ted, for the most part, they're a little more subdued.
Dude, the short dead dude.
Yeah. But that works for him. I think that really plays into it well. So I'm fine with his overall performance in here. It kind of makes sense. And when he has to freak out, you buy why he's freaking out. First
Yeah,
time he
true.
comes out of the Matrix and sees everybody for what it is. That's a freak out moment.
It's
The
miles
bug.
better than his reactions in Bram Stoker's Dracula. Oh my word.
Carfax Abbey.
Carfax Abbey.
His
You
accent
are
is
now the owner of Carfax Abbey.
his accent is as bad as Julia Roberts's in the Jekyll and Hyde movie. Mary
Oh,
Riley.
wow.
Yeah, I can't stand either one of them. I'm like,
Oh,
you're
Mary
great
Riley.
actor.
Yeah.
You're great actors. What are you doing?
Yes. Yes.
But no, I think this fits for him, and I think this was the perfect role for him because it does get him out there. He gets a little bit of that inner monologue that you kind of need with Keanu. Keanu plays roles that a lot of times you need to look at that inner side. Constantine, great example too.
Oh, yes.
There's an inner complexity to Keanu that really works here. And actually, when you talk to him, he is this way. He really is the John Anderson. Like that's just he's really calm.
Thomas Anderson, I
You
thought
know,
this was.
he is. I've seen videos of a kid walks up to him at a convention. I like your films. My one wish was to meet you. You know, he's real slow with it. You know, he was like, I think he was right after he was plugging Toy Story 4. And he was like, do you like Duke Kaboom? I like Duke, and he's just calm and really complex in his presentation.
And he's also one of the nicest people, according to what I've
So
heard.
much. Yes.
Everyone says he is such a nice man.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, yeah. No doubts. He's one of those people I would love to just chat with.
He's Canadian.
He is Canadian. Born in Lebanon.
Yeah,
Born
born
in
in Beirut.
Interesting. Very
Yeah,
interesting.
one of
Mhm.
those things like, wow, I didn't know that. But he comes off, I'm not saying he is, but he comes off very Buddhist.
Hmm.
Very, this is life. This is the way it is.
Very
But
zen.
yeah, very Zen. But when he has to kick it up, he can kick it up and he does it well.
And that's Keanu Reeves is Neo.
I I pretty much agree with Chris's assessment of it. He's just coming off of Speed and a couple of other,
Mhm.
kind of street creddy movies. It's I think A Walk in the Clouds happened somewhere in between that point.
Mhm.
Uh and yeah, it was definitely a subdued role in pieces, and yet, there are the points where you know, he has to ratchet it up. The bug gets pulled out of his
Oh man,
stomach,
that's a
and
gross scene,
you
but I
know,
love it.
lo losing his mouth, and waking up in the battery pod
Ugh,
and all that
yeah.
other stuff. But yeah, no, overall, he didn't overshadow anybody else. So yeah, no, all in all, great role in my opinion.
Right? Then of course we come to Carrie Ann Moss's Trinity. Everybody's crush at that time, as I recall. Even though I mean she's cute enough, but I never understood the Trinity crush thing, but yet again, a very subdued character, but also an incredibly iconic character. It's one of the great fight scenes in film history. The first fight scene, the famous kick in the air, the camera spins around. One of the most iconic shots in all of cinema. In fact, funny story, in 2001, our family goes to see Shrek. In Shrek, Princess Fiona does that scene. After the movie, my dad says to me, "What was that all about?" That's from The Matrix, Dad. The image had become so iconic that, well, so many movies have parodied it that nobody has done it quite like the original film. And certainly, she is one of the great female action heroes of modern film. Now, the character maybe isn't the most interesting character, and she's rather subdued, but I think Carrie Ann Moss gets the job done. Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, yeah. For the most part, she does. Yeah, the scorpion kick is. is definitely one of those things that comes to my mind the most. There's some other bits where I cringed a little bit. Damn it, Cypher
The
being one of
romance is a
them.
bit.
Yeah, yeah,
The
and
romance
that
is a bit cringy,
their
unfortunately.
chemistry is not is at least in the first film is pretty much not there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have to have the Disney kiss at the end. They gotta have the Sleeping Beauty needs to
Gotta
be
put a bow
awakened.
on it. Yeah.
Sleeping Beauty needs to be awakened. In this
Yeah.
case, it's gender reversed, but I don't really buy that part of it. Chris, your thoughts on Carrie Ann Moss?
I'm not the biggest fan of her in this,
Mm-hmm.
but they wrote her to kind of automatically be in love with Neo because that was her destiny. And I'm like, I've talked about the chemistry. I don't buy the chemistry. And the sad thing is, she's a great actress.
She
I
is.
love her in Chocolat. Chocolat is a great film for
Is
her,
that her
and
or is that
that is
Juliette
her.
Binoche?
No, yeah, she's in Chocolat.
Is that Juliette Binoche?
She is, but she's also in Chocolat.
Oh, okay.
I like her in Chocolat. She also is in that
I'm
film.
confused because they look alike.
Yeah, they do look a little bit alike, don't they?
Yeah.
Memento also. I like
Oh,
her
yeah.
in Memento.
He's great, man.
Hmm.
These are great
That's a
films.
great one.
They're great films. But what has really defined her career, unfortunately, has become The Matrix. And I just don't think it's a good representation of what she could do. She is a victim of being trapped in the writing. I love the story, but the writing of her character is lacking. I don't buy that she loves him just because she was told she would fall in love with the one.
Yeah.
I don't like that either. I don't like that. You're supposed to love him, so I don't buy it. And
Yeah, how do you Deus Ex Machina,
If there had
an
been more
emotion like that?
chemistry between the two of them, then.
and I okay, and I know this is crazy. I think she was too old for the role. She wasn't that old when she did it.
Interesting. Okay.
I think she was too old for the role. Now she's 57. So she was actually in her 30s when she did it. But I didn't buy her. I really didn't. I looked and went, she looks a little old for him. And it wasn't the stereotype, and maybe that's a good thing in overall casting. It doesn't have to be this hot buxom babe, coming in
With a
and to
huge
take,
age difference.
and with that, and let's be honest,
That
with
usually
those leather
happens.
costumes, they very easily could have went in that
Yeah,
direction with
she
a
could have been
female.
over sexualized.
I mean, look, we're Star Trek fans. Look what they did to Seven of Nine.
Unfortunately, yes.
Like, and
Yeah.
by the way, that's someone who at the time I would have thought I would have bought Jerry Ryan in this role. 100% would have bought Jerry Ryan in
To
this
be
role.
fair, we love some of them, but yes,
We're a little biased on the matter.
they
No, she
costumed her
just did
character.
Dracula 2000 instead.
Oh, see, that's the only reason I watched Dracula 2000.
Okay.
Gary Ryan's in it. She's in it for like 5 minutes, and that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I think you're right. The costuming for 7 and 9 did her no favors.
But she has an advantage, and then not to keep touting her filmography, but then she goes on to do Jessica Jones much later on. I love her in Jessica Jones.
Yeah, she's great in that.
Carrie Ann is in that. Yes, that's
Yes,
true.
she is. So overall, if I have to point and say, is there a weakness in this film? I'm gonna say it's Carrie Ann Moss's Trinity. Now, she's not awful terrible, but I don't buy her and that relationship. And that's a really important thing that builds into the sequels. That relationship is important.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just awkward and weird.
Yep, well said. And now I have to talk about him. Joey Pants. Joe Pantoliano is Cypher. Now, Joey has always been good at playing kind of slimy, questionable characters. Like, yet again, as we mentioned, he was also in Memento as another similar kind of character. So I think that he really does a good job with the role. Now, I don't like him. I think you're not supposed to like him. But I think it's totally believable that he would betray them. for the sake of, he'd rather live in the Matrix than live in the real world. Aaron, your thoughts on Joey Tance as Cypher?
I absolutely love Joey. I have since watching the Goonies as a kid.
Oh,
So
that's
it was
right. Yes, 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 yes.
so that was one of those. Oh, hey, it's him.
Yeah, I just
Um,
watched that recently for the first time.
but yeah, his whole motivation for betraying everybody is a bit of a trope. Let's face it. But
True.
did he pull it off as an actor? I'd say so. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Chris, thoughts on Joey Tance?
He is a great side villain, and it makes sense. You understand why he's going to Judas this thing.
Yeah.
Um, he's a. I anytime I can mention it, I have to. It's a lot better in here than he was in Congo.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that.
Oh man, anytime I can mention Congo, actually, that also in our family is a running joke. I'm gonna find some sesame cake.
How could a
Simo
person
Hamalka.
put, you
But
know,
all that being said, I really buy what he's saying. Don't get me wrong. How many would prefer to have not taken the pill? Who would rather stay in obscurity and not
yeah,
know the
yeah,
knowledge? And it's true.
yep,
Absolutely true. I think there's some credibility in, even in a flawed system. Is it better to live in that system if you don't know how it really works? Like, do you want to know how the sausage is made? No, I don't.
yeah,
I like
no,
sausage. I'd like to. I don't want to be a vegetarian or a vegan. I like my steak. And so, even though he's a jerk, even though he's just you moron, I buy it. I understand it.
mhm.
And he's a lot of fun here, and his points are valid. And that giant gun that he has, that thing is cool. The big old, yeah,
It looked like he
The
could have
big
been
old
right out of Ghostbusters.
it
yeah,
does. Yeah,
the arc thrower or whatever it is. It just
I don't
pulls out a
know.
big old arc of electricity.
Yeah, but I don't blame him. I do blame him, but overall, human wise, I don't blame him. I understand.
Yeah. Now we come to the character who would probably be the most iconic character if it were not for another character, and we'll get there in a minute. Lawrence Fishburne is Morpheus, the Obi-Wan Kenobi to Neo's Luke Skywalker. The great mentor figure, and Lawrence Fishburne, of course, could do no wrong, in my opinion. He's terrific. Shame on that one guy for confusing him with Samuel L. Jackson. They look nothing alike.
That's one of the greatest
Of
internet memes of all
course,
time.
Lawrence Fishburne has a career going back to Apocalypse Now. And this guy has been in some serious stuff. And Morpheus, yet again, an iconic character. A subdued character that I think, of our three main heroes, he might be the most interesting. And arguably gives the best performance of the three of them. What's your thoughts?
Um, First of all, it's not just Lawrence Fishburne. It is Emmy and Tony Award winning actor Lawrence
Yes, an
Fishburne.
Academy Award nominee.
He's one of those that, yeah, if he had a Grammy, man, I'm saying we're making a run for an EGOT. But man, he's so good in here, and as the mystic leader,
Mhm.
the mentor. You compare him to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Well, that is so correct. I love Obi-Wan. Love Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan in the original Star Wars sucks. Kind of does. That now we know why he fights the way he does, but I don't buy it. Here, when he is captured, and it's not just we gotta save him. No, he's gonna try to break out of that himself. And that scene in the room where he breaks out of the chains and goes running for that chopper, man. I'm like, Obi-Wan, nothing, man. It's Morpheus. He fights him and beats him. Stop trying to hit me and hit me. This is the kind of guy that your hero needs, that's going to push him because he believes in him, because he knows what is necessary. And Lawrence Fishburne, man, this guy could act his way in and out of a paper sack every day of the week. and I buy it. I've never really seen a role for Lawrence Fishburne that I just haven't liked. I can't really think of something he has done. Go back to Nightmare on Elm Street 3. I love him in Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and it's quick. Rumblefish. Love him in Rumblefish Apocalypse Now. Not even a major part in I love him. Everything he does just turns to gold, and this guy is the mystic monk. And he plays it out so well, but he is a leader.
Yeah.
And you buy that. You buy his presence. Lawrence Fishburne, and I do mean this, and that was a tough year for Best Supporting Actor. Lawrence Fishburne should have been nominated for this role, for this film.
Agreed. Yeah.
Interesting, yeah. Now, well, we will not stand for Obi-Wan slander on the channel. We'll move on. Aaron, your thoughts on Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus?
Oh, 100%. Man, arguably is one of the best actors in the last 40, 50 years. I love him to death. He literally does not have a bad part. I would arguably say that he is also the superior Perry White.
Okay. Yes, I think I would agree there. All right. And then, of course, we have to talk about a movie like this is only as great as its villain. One of the most iconic villains in recent film history. Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith. Everyone who talks about this film quotes the particular way that he says things. And I think that Hugo Weaving here, over the top, yes, but you need that in a movie like this. And his enunciation, his bad American accent and his over enunciation actually helps to make this character iconic. If he had spoken plainly, I don't think it would have been as iconic. He's a great villain, spouting off his prejudiced attitudes toward humans and his gigantic teeth. I've noticed there are large teeth in this. And yet again, another great for the disabled to pull off some major action scenes. I don't know if Hugo is able to do those scenes, but nonetheless, the character is able to. And he probably, in many ways, besides Morpheus, is maybe the most iconic character to come out of this movie. Aaron, what do you think?
There was a brief period from 2007 to late 2008 where I was patterning myself after Agent Smith while I was working for a certain large electronic retailer. Let's just say it was very large and blue.
Chris, thoughts on Hugo Weaving?
So to answer your question, he did not do his own stunts. In fact, the reason why he doesn't do his own stunts in this film is because of the injury he received. He fractured his hip while training for a stunt in this film. No more. In fact, there's a funny story he tells in conventions where watching all of his stunt doubles when he looks, that's how he learned he had a receding hairline. It's through his stunt doubles. It's pretty funny. But that being said, this guy is the villain. Like it becomes as iconic as Darth Vader. Like Mr. Smith, you know what he's all about. And if you need a villain for your franchise, this is not a bad way to go. As in the next few years, the next decade, he's going to hit two other major ones. He becomes Megatron. He's the voice of Megatron, which I buy in the Transformers franchise. And then, all hail to him. He is the Red Skull. Me, and he hated that role. He hated it. And I love him in it. He's so good in it. Yeah. I love him as the bad guy. He's even, I'm thinking kind of antagonistically, he is the voice of the curmudgeon elder in the Happy Feet films.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yes, that's
You know,
right.
but again, you need a guy who's going to challenge you. I love it, but he can flip it around, and I can't think of anyone else as Elrond.
Mhm.
But
True.
again,
That's true.
you know, and again, I'd like to say you don't get Lord of the Rings without, but this was already going on.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. I love him. I love him in this. He's antagonistic. He's funny.
Mhm.
His villain is funny.
Mhm.
You know, but he's a menace.
You know what
When
I hate
you
about
look when you
humans?
look at
It's
Mr.
the
Smith,
smell.
when you look at Agent Smith,
Mhm.
he is a threat, and you know
Yeah.
it. You ever look at a villain, a villain performance, and you just like, I laugh at you. I'm not intimidated by you. Agent Smith is intimidating. He can beat you, and you know it. And in the later films, he becomes more dangerous. And it's his performance, I think, that buys into that. Heat is an example of taking the writing and just running with it and creating your own slant on it. And I
Yeah.
love him.
Yep. Indeed. This is definitely, as the kids would say, an extra performance. All right. Now we're going to combine the next two sections, screenplay and the themes. But they very much go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than talking about the actual screenwriting here, let's talk about the ideas in this film. There are a lot here. And the idea of the Plato's cave. The idea of reality is not what you think it is. This is an interesting idea that has fascinated people for thousands of years. And the Matrix has this interesting idea of you're living in a computer simulation. Now, this is not the first time that someone has told this kind of story, that this for those our age is maybe the most iconic telling of that story about the nature of being in a false reality. We've already talked about sort of the comparisons to George Orwell and other things like that. So I wanted to talk about this idea of living in a matrix, living in a false reality, and how well the movie manages to pull it off. For myself, I think it does it beautifully. Do you? I'll start with you, Captain Ingle. Do you think that they told that part of the story, that idea was that well told here?
Absolutely. They built up a world here that is believable, that is unto itself. Um, I really enjoy it. Heavily too. You see the works of Jean Baudrillard. Baudrillard. I think it's Baudrillard. Who's a French philosopher. Wrote a book called Simulacra and Simulation, which takes a look at these ideas of reality and how we create things and the operate how the real world works, and that everything we do is kind of a facade of what's really underneath. And it was kind of a basis for the Wachowskis in the writing process for this. In fact, I think the entire cast, if you were cast in the film, you had to be able to understand and explain that book, Simulacra and Simulation, to that you truly understood what was going on with the Matrix. And I will be honest, when I saw this when it first came out, there were things that I don't think I quite grasped and understood with it. I think it was a lot deeper than I got into it. Um, Now, as technology has really grown, I think and I've seen these films many more times. I understand it better now, but definitely going into it, I didn't quite get every aspect of it. What is real? What is fake? And it started really to get me to think about our own reality. What is real? I'm not saying we're living in a computer, but what is real? What is a simulation? What is just presented to us for the sake of keeping the humdrum going? Look at the news. What is simulated? What is created? And now, when we have artificially intelligent ways to create news, art, media, music, take your pick. What is real and what isn't? This was so far ahead of its time in its creation and its themes that it is still a relevant philosophical discussion in a film. It's perfect for that.
Aaron, your thoughts?
Agreed. I also the simulacra and simulation, I do believe, was also where the term the desert of the real was coined,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken. The worlds, as it were, are so vastly different, and just the way certain shots are framed, both of these worlds are believable, specifically the when they pick Neo up and they give him the rundown the very first time, and he kind of turns them down when they drop him off at his apartment, and it's that top down shot in the dark with the rain and everything like that. That's honestly, that's one of my favorite film shots of all time. uh but also, again, it is so relatable to many things on so many different levels, with things being quote unquote real versus fake. It's just vague enough that you can apply it to all kinds of different things.
Now, it's interesting, Chris, that you mentioned philosophy,
Mm-hmm.
because there are many philosophers whose works can be compared to this.
True.
Even going back as far as Descartes and Kant,
I
and
think,
even
therefore I
going all
am.
the way back to Plato, going all
with
the way
a
back to Plato thousands of years ago.
with a healthy dose of Nietzsche on top.
With Nietzsche, with some Nietzsche in here, yes. The philosophical underpinnings of this story are brilliant, because I think that it, instead of just being an action film, this is layered in some deep philosophy. I mean, Descartes, who those of you listening who may not know who Rene Descartes is, he's the guy who said, I think, therefore I am. And in the novel where he postulated his thoughts on such things, the book, I should say, called First Meditations, he even meditated on the idea that what if the world that we see is an illusion created by an evil demon to enslave us? I mean, this is a guy who was writing 500 years ago. It's pretty insane. And if we were to consider Philip K. Dick a philosopher, though, I don't know if I call it one, but even he commented on these things. And certainly, as we mentioned, William Gibson, the father of the cyberpunk genre. But as far as the philosophical parts go, of history's great philosophers, Aaron, how do you feel that how this film compares some of their arguments,
It
or incorporates some of their arguments?
it kind of runs parallel with a lot of those ideas, and then of course, when you start actually peeling back the layers, and what the Wachowskis were actually talking about. It essentially, it is its own thing, but again, it is completely relatable to all of those other things. There, once again, I think they're 4 a.m. But what is the question? Really, what are you?
Chris, thoughts?
I could not have said it better myself. I don't think we know now what we are and who we are and the meanings of existence. What are we? Are we just, molecules put together with, bits of electrical energy that coalesce into a temporary form and then it's gone? Or is there a greater purpose? And when we talk about destiny and things like that, this film takes into that. How does the Oracle know what she knows? How does she know it's going to turn out this way? That Trinity was going to, did she plan? There's so many questions. You just don't know.
The chicken and the egg argument.
Did we create the Matrix, or did, again, it becomes these ideas of creationism and existence and greater questions that philosophers have been trying to answer for the time of existence.
Yeah.
Well
said.
This film can't do it. It can't answer those questions. In fact, you have more questions than answers by the end of this film.
2 hours and 15 minutes is not enough time to answer all these questions.
Yeah. And it touches on all of those things. And this is a philosopher's dream. In fact, philosophy class in junior college, this was required watching.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned earlier, simulacra and simulation. This was required reading for the cast.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned the Oracle, and before we move on, I wanted to pose a question. The Oracle says he is not the one. But the end of the movie tells us he is the one. Now, I have not seen the sequels, and going just with what is in the film, we learn that he is the one. Now, why then does the Oracle tell him he's not the one? Now, my theory is that he wasn't the one because he didn't believe it. That it had to come down to him choosing to believe. Chris, what is your answer to the question? How is it either one, even though she says he's not the one?
So I'd like to think of this in terms of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The ending to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, originally there is only one Slayer at any given time.
Yes.
But eventually they made it to where any woman could be the Slayer. Anyone. That was the kind of how it ended. Every girl on the planet, born in there on in, had the potential to be the Slayer.
They were all activated, yes.
So I think here is the same thing. Anyone had the potential to be the Slayer or to be the one, but the matter was, did you believe it enough? And did they believe in you? Think about it. Morpheus believed that Neo was the one. Trinity believed it because she was told she was going to fall in love with him. Was she looking for it? Again, you're asking these kinds of questions.
Yes.
I think because he didn't believe that he wasn't. Nietzsche. I think, therefore I am. You're not the one because you don't think you are.
Well, Descartes is I think the.
Or I said, yeah, Nietzsche, yeah, Descartes.
Nietzsche's when you look into the abyss, and that guy.
You know what? All of these are old dead guys, okay? And they're very confusing with names I still cannot spell. Anyway, but no, I think that's the answer to it, is that he didn't believe in it was, and if he wasn't going to believe it, then he wasn't, which put everyone into question. But yet Morpheus still believed he was the one after that point. No, I think you're wrong. There we go, exercising free will. Can you create the one? Now, you haven't seen the other films, but we go on in the fourth film, awful film that it is, but more people can be the one. Because, spoiler alert, sorry to tell you, Trinity also becomes the one. And so we find that both Neo and her are the one together. But others can be, and others will come. But I guess in that moment, it was that idea that he just didn't accept it. He didn't believe it.
Yeah. Aaron, your thoughts on that question?
The Oracle told him exactly what he needed to hear at that moment. At that moment.
Motivation, in a sense.
Plain and simple. It was more so he had to come to it himself.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
When you think of the hero's journey, there has to be, and this is another stereotypical hero's journey story. You have to let your hero struggle. You have to. They discover who they truly are through adversity, as any of us do.
And the step that Joseph Campbell describes is the refusal of the call,
Mm-hmm.
which
The,
happens a lot in these stories.
the greatest heroes in history and in reality are those who have had to persevere to understand why they are a leader, to understand why they are a hero.
Mm-hmm.
If those that have it just thrust upon them, they accept it, they're born with it, they just go into it, given to them as a graduation gift. That's okay. They don't tend to be as effective leaders. They
Mm-hmm.
don't, because they don't understand what it means to push, to persevere. Neo has to persevere here. There's a point where he's got to fight Agent Smith, and everyone is telling him, "You can't win. You're not. Remember, you're not the one. You're gonna die. No one has survived." He has to take those beatings, and he dies.
Yes.
By the
Yes.
way, not the first time, not the last time.
Oh
He
boy.
will die. Lots.
Yeah.
He's Jesus. Oh, that's a whole other
Well,
thing.
we'll get there in a minute. We'll get there in a minute.
Sorry. Anyway, but yeah, he perseveres and he has to push it. And so her telling him that is exactly what he needs. I'm not valued. I'm not worth it. Why am I here? What is going on? And when your back's against the wall, which in that scene, by the way, his back's against the wall and he's getting pummeled,
Literally.
he's got to believe in what is potential.
Mhm.
And it takes him being broken down and destroyed and that quick moment, that quick glimpse that, wait a second, maybe I can be. Maybe I can do more. And it's not just him. Think about the training scenarios for everyone in the Matrix, right? Why do people fall during the jump scenario? Why do they fall and smack their heads on the floor? Because
Everybody falls the first time.
they don't
Yep.
believe they can.
Yep.
You have to believe that you can. I think they set it up right at that start that anyone can be the hero.
And at the very end of the movie, he literally takes a leap of faith that causes him to fly. Now,
Yep.
you mentioned we have touched upon the idea of the religious aspects here now. And Chris, you know that I'm a very religious person. I think it's safe to say you are too. Aaron, I don't know where would you describe yourself as religious or not particularly?
I wouldn't say a religious person. I have my ideas though.
Okay. Yeah, but we all have sort of the spiritual sense. But one of the things about this film, about that we've been talking about the chosen idea, the Bible speaks of God's people who are chosen. Now, some Christians have interpreted it mean that predestination, only some people can be saved. I believe the opposite. I believe that in order to be chosen, one must choose to be chosen. It's not going to automatically happen if you're not on that path. And this brings us to, as Chris mentioned, Neo as a Jesus parallel. Now, without getting too deep into it, I believe, and I think most Christians believe, that Jesus wasn't our Savior just because. It's because he chose to be.
Mhm.
In fact, he chose to put his own will aside for the sake of accepting this. So, in other words, it's a sense of, it's not just that, oh, somebody says you're going to be something. You have to make that choice for yourself. And we all have been given the free will to do that. Or have we? Dun, dun, dun. We won't talk about that. We could be here for hours talking about that. But the idea of the religious parallels here of a chosen one, someone who can save people from an evil reality, someone who dies and is resurrected, and someone who chooses to become, in the words of Obi-Wan, more powerful than you can possibly imagine. And many other religious elements, because it's not just Christianity that we're talking about here. This is very Buddhist in many ways. It's very Taoist. Um, the idea of, in fact, there have been a group of people who have created a religion based on this movie called Matrixism. So the philosophical and religious elements run deep because the honest truth is religion, no matter what you believe, is a way to explain the universe. Uh, in a universe that we cannot fully comprehend. Well, therefore, we have many philosophies, many religions, many spiritual paths that attempt to explain existence. The Matrix is an interesting explanation of existence as an artificial reality, which is yet another one of these attempts to, at least in this fictional story, understand why the universe is, why the world is as it is. So I just want to talk about that really quick. Aaron, your thoughts on some of the spiritual and religious or otherwise philosophies here?
No, I think you're right. There are so many there's so many different schools of belief
Mm-hmm.
at play in the story. I mean, one person could, say, oh well, his name's Thomas Anderson. That's, he was the doubting Thomas.
Good point.
And
Good point.
somebody else could, look at it, from like you said, from a Taoist point. The anagram for Neo is one.
Mm-hmm.
Buddhism. Emotion is an illusion and things of that nature. It goes back to the fact that it's just vague enough that it can be related to anything. But these are archetypes that we see all over the place throughout so many different things. So it's just kind of however it resonates with you.
It's very Star Wars in the
Mhm.
sense of it's a philosophy, a spiritual philosophy that anyone, whatever church or any spiritual path, or even people who don't believe in God or things like that, they can identify with. The Matrix, similarly, we can all find something in it that we identify with. Also, the idea of, if you think about the Buddha meditating under the tree until all the worldly concerns fell away and he achieved enlightenment. Neo achieves enlightenment in this story. So the list just goes on and on. Chris, your thoughts on the spiritual aspects of the story?
Believe in it what you will.
Mhm.
If you believe something, you're probably going to see what you want to see. Now, that isn't a bad thing. That isn't. It's a matter of perception and viewing and what you get out of it. Now, in reality, though, isn't that any film that we watch? Ideally, is that you watch it and view it and you take from it what you truly want.
Mhm.
Is this Buddhism? Is this postmodernism? Is this another allegory for Christianity? Is it just a fun romp through an action-packed film? It's what you take from it. It doesn't have to be one way or another. Now,
Mhm.
I saw Christ allegories from it. I saw it, and again,
Yeah.
he dies in the process and everyone mourns and the villain thinks they won, and then not 3 days, but 3 seconds later, he resurrects himself.
Mhm.
And 3 films later, he's
And the
resurrected
magic
again.
kiss. The
Oh,
magic kiss.
yeah, the kiss.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that brings us to the final thing as far as themes. The parallels to Alice in Wonderland, which is referenced quite a bit in this movie. Morpheus has the very famous line, you take the red pill and I'll show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Incredible stuff. The idea of being awakened to this new reality like Alice was, and encountering strange characters like Alice did. And the idea of there's something else going on here. besides the reality that you know. And certainly we see a lot of rabbits imagery in this. I think somebody's watching something at the Oracle's house. And there's bunnies on the screen.
Night of the Lepus.
Night of the that's right. And I've seen part of that movie, so as far as, and of course the fairy tale allegories, and there obviously well, at least it seemed obvious to me. I don't know if it's obvious or not. Trinity kissing Neo and waking up. It's Snow White. It's Sleeping Beauty. It's all these stories that we know. Whether you buy the love story or not, which I don't, it is a very iconic image. It harkens back to fairy tales. And the idea of fairy tales in general, the idea that there is a world beyond our perception. So, Aaron, your thoughts on the fairy tale aspects of this story?
Oh yeah, no, you're absolutely right. You've got Choi's White Rabbit tattoo.
Oh, yes.
All of the just yeah. There's so many Alice references, and that again that goes through what your perception is, and that takes a step back again, to what are you in fact?
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of the Red Queen in Elsewhere, painting the white roses red because she wanted them to be red. There, right there, is an idea of disguising reality, which is something that the Matrix is very heavily about. Chris, your thoughts on the fairy tale aspects here?
Yeah, I see it. I see it, and of course the Alice references are hit you over the head pretty hard. And I like it, but while in Alice there's kind of a nonsense purpose to it. And that's one of the things I've always liked about Alice is that the story of Alice doesn't serve a
The
purpose.
sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his light.
It is just what it is. But if we think about it, maybe that's what the Matrix wants us to think. It is what it is. It is inevitable. It is plain and simple. You don't have to think about it. Just go with it. And so I see it. I get it. But this as a fairy tale or even kind of following any of that doesn't really fit for me. But that's because Alice, in its nature is about chaos. It is about randomness. It is about just accepting what's out there as what's out there, and we don't have to give a reason to it. The Matrix has a reason. We know it has a purpose. But does Neo? There goes the question.
All right, as we conclude the themes and ideas section, I will pose this question, but we will not answer it because otherwise we would be here forever. Are we living in the Matrix? Okay, let's move on to the next section, which is music. Now, the score, at least in my opinion, is good, but maybe it doesn't stand out as much to me. However, the opening scene, when we first see those zeros and ones, those symbols in the matrix, that music immediately is like, I know what this is. If you hear that, you'll go, that's the Matrix. And there's a great use of songs in this. But as far as the score itself, as a whole, I don't find it as iconic. Chris, do you agree or disagree?
I disagree because there are riffs that are from the Matrix when you hear it. When you're going into the Matrix, there's a specific riff they play that I go with, and when I hear some of these things, I go into. But this is really
bullet time music.
Yeah, but this is definitely pre-Daft Punk.
Yes.
Because when I watched Tron Legacy,
yeah,
there's a lot of things in there that Daft Punk uses that really reminded me of the Matrix.
It's true.
And so it kind of fits in with each other. Is this something that I would pop in a CD or a vinyl and go, I want to listen to the Matrix soundtrack? Probably not. But does it aid into the story? Does it make sense? If Aaron is listening to the Matrix soundtrack, I'm shocked. Not really.
Aaron, your thoughts?
So this is yes, now I get to talk a lot because this is actually one of the films from the 90s that has one of the best soundtracks ever done. You've got all kinds of great music all over it. I mean, you've got Rob Zombie and you've got Rage Against the Machine. I love the score elements, like what Chris says. Some of it is a bit the scoring of it is not so it's not so in the forefront of it. You do have some of those cues and those notes, like when they are jumping into the Matrix. But as a whole, there are a lot of other aspects to it. I mean, the last song that is played is called "Wake Up."
Rage Against the Machine, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Yes. Which, by the way, the title Rage Against the Machine. Gee, the Matrix. Go figure, huh?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, you've got other artists that come into play in later films, like Juno Reactor is a big one in the second movie, and that's great. I love that whole soundtrack too. It is very much so a product of the time, and I occasionally I will still listen to I'll still listen to Mona Lisa Overdrive every now and again, just because it is a piece of nostalgia for me.
Yeah, it does definitely bring the nostalgia. Music often, I find, brings nostalgia to me more than anything else I've discovered. Now, the last thing, we're going to talk about this quickly because we've already gone a little long, but the spectacle of the film. This is definitely one of the high points of The Matrix. The influence that this film has had on film. I think a lot of it, the spectacle and the visual language of The Matrix is still with us today. Is still very much with us. For good and ill, because, all great films have a good effect on movies and a bad effect on movies. But nonetheless, the visuals here. Bullet time is one of the most iconic images in film of Neo leaning back as the bullets in slow-mo go flying around. The use of slow-mo in the action scenes. Now, John Woo had already done a little bit of that in the 90s, but this was something that really became mainstream after this. The camera speeding up and then slowing down. We see that in so many movies nowadays during action scenes. The visual color of the film, kind of the darker color palette, that's definitely in modern movies. Modern movies, in fact, one might argue have gone too dark, and then the whole natural lighting thing only makes it so you can't see what's going on in half the movies. And I think The Matrix might be in some way responsible, but regardless, this did win the Best Visual Effects Oscar, beating Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace. And that was significant because at the time, I mean, there were only 4 Star Wars films at the time. But no Star Wars film had Best Visual Effects until this year. In 99, of course, as I said, what a terrific year in cinema. Groundbreaking in terms of the films and the technology of making films. Now, I think that the Matrix visual effects have aged pretty well. There's a few shots. You definitely tell what era this film was made in. It was so ahead of its time with the visual. So I'll start with you, Aaron. Just really quick, the visual effects as a whole, and also the visual language of the film.
12 out of 10. They'll be making bullet time jokes for the next 40 years. And I also posit that had Wu Ping not been brought in to do the Matrix, I don't think that movies like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, House of
Yes.
Flying Daggers, I think they wouldn't have had the same impact had he not been brought in on that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I had not considered that. Definitely, and the hero and other films like that. Chris, your thoughts on the visual effects and the visual language?
The visual effects speak for themselves. They are iconic. They're still used today. They've been improved drastically, and they were pretty good in 1999, and I think they still are.
Yeah.
But what sticks to me the most is actually overall the cinematography. And you watch this film, when you first watch it, it's easy to notice the green tint in the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is in a green tint. It's obvious. But even after watching it so many times, the longer you sit and watch the film, the more you don't notice it.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Matrix all about? And this idea that, we don't notice that we're in that kind of reality. When you're watching the film, you forget you are in the Matrix. That green tint goes away and it's still there. Like blink it a couple of times. So the filming and use of the green tint is a small thing, but is so important in that separation. And they use a much more natural a light with a little bit of a blue tint when they're in the Nebuchadnezzar. That's a little bit
Yeah,
different, and
that's
it
true.
differentiates it. That you could tell. So every time you enter the Matrix, you notice that slight green tint. But again, stay there for about 5 minutes. You don't see it anymore.
Yeah, if you don't notice it, then the filmmakers are doing their job. I think
Yeah,
it's safe
but
to
I
say.
think that's part of that idea is getting locked in the Matrix, being in that. And we as viewers don't see that anymore. It becomes the reality
And
that we are in.
our subconscious sees it.
Mhm.
In
Mhm.
fact, you could argue, there was a great video essay a few years ago about Inception, and I'll apply it to the Matrix. Which is the Matrix is about an artificial reality. What are movies? An artificial reality
Mhm.
that for that runtime we believe in. That is our reality. And in fact, some might argue that our reality is shaped by movies and TV,
Mhm.
which is sort of adds a meta level commentary to
And
this film.
and I think all the spectacle too, it all adds up because in the end, when we talk about its accolades, it was nominated for 4 Oscars, all technical Oscars, but they won all 4 of them. Editing, sound effects editing, and visual effects. Won all 4 of them. So I think that shows how long lasting this has become. In 2012, Library of Congress opted to preserve this film for its cultural relevance. Absolutely. And I think technologically, that sold a lot of it.
It did. I think everybody saw the trailer and probably went, wow, this is not something that we had ever seen on film before. And 1999 was a great year in the history of cinema.
Mhm.
And The Matrix, as I said at the beginning, even though it is technically a 20th century film, it's still very much like a 21st century movie. Maybe it is the first 21st century movie, you could argue. And film has forever been changed because of it. As we come to the end here, as Chris said, yes, it won 3 Academy Awards. It made a ton of money. everybody was referencing it left and right. I was in an English class freshman year of high school, and we all had to reenact the play Antigone, an ancient Greek theater, in whatever style we could imagine. One group did it as the Matrix. They were all wearing leather, all wearing sunglasses, doing the blue pill, red pill thing. How that applies to Antigone, I don't remember. But nonetheless, the cultural relevance, the parodies, and even now, you can argue that Christopher Nolan's films don't work as well for us if it were not for the Matrix. A lot of these films have a similar visual style. And Inception, I would argue, is the child of the Matrix. It is like you don't get Inception without the Matrix. And that's another film that completely changed cinema and is still with us today. So, as we come to an end, I just want to get your thoughts. We'll start with our guest. Aaron, your final thoughts on this film.
Absolutely love it. I will never get tired of it, even if I say that I am. And for the listeners out there who have not watched it, as a companion piece to it, watch the Animatrix. Groundbreaking animation and fills a lot of blanks that you will have at the end of watching it.
Chris, final thoughts.
Watch this. Don't watch the sequels.
I would agree there. And for myself, I think that you cannot overstate how influential this film is. And those of you listening who may be rather young, when this came out, this was earth-shattering. Everybody was talking about it. It was everywhere after it came out. And the cultural impact, not only as far as film technology, but the cultural impact, you could fill a library with how this affected culture. And certainly it's one of the great films celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, but one of the great films of the last 30 years. And one of, if not in like the top 2 or 3 most influential films of the last 30 years. And if you haven't seen it, well, what are you doing listening to this podcast? Go see it. If you haven't seen it, let us know your thoughts. We'd be interested here, and also to hear how this movie affected you on an individual basis. Did you see it when it was in theater? Did you see it later? Did you understand the parodies came out? There's so much to talk about with both the cultural and technological impact of this film. Aaron, we cannot thank you enough for joining us today. This has been an absolute blast. Where can people find you?
Oh, you can find me all over the socials. Festering Ruin. I am on the TikTok at Fessy Rides Again. It's all kind of the similar thing. But yeah, I'm out there.
Chris, where can we find you in the Matrix?
It's kind of like the Matrix. It's Twitch and Twitter.
And I turn the con back over to you, Captain.
You can find me on Twitch and Twitter at cingle1984. But as always, we end every episode. Qapla'. Live long and prosper.
Peace and long life.